Hello, everybody, and welcome to Spring 2021 Tips and Tools for a Successful Semester. I'm glad that you're here. This is a very brief overview of some tips and tricks for having a very successful semester academically. We will just touch briefly on a lot of things. So I encourage you to reach out to me if you've got more questions or you'd like more materials after the presentation. I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you. But let's jump into it. First things first, my name is Bevan. I work at Illinois Wesleyan in the Action Research Center, or ARC for short. I'm also a Wesleyan alum. I started as a biology pre-med major and eventually moved over to sociology and psychology. I graduated in 2010 and I spent 5 years working in the nonprofit sector locally before coming back to Illinois Wesleyan. I was first generation in my family to go to college, so I was kind of figuring everything out for the first time on my own. And I had a really challenging first year academically. So my hope is that you can learn from my mistakes and utilize these resources proactively on the front end of your Wesleyan career and hit the ground running come January. So my first bit of advice is to be very proactive in building your academic toolkit. If you were starting a brand new job, you would probably research the company and the position. You would read the employee manual, put your schedule shifts and important reminders into your calendar, and really just organize yourself to make sure you were getting to work and doing the best job you could. I would encourage you to take ownership of your academic career in the exact same way. Simply showing up to lecture and being present for it really doesn't quite check all the boxes for being successful. So if you take these pointers to heart and employ them, you're going to have a much smoother, much more successful semester. One of the ways that I would strongly encourage you to get started on that journey is to connect with our student success tutors. These are tutors available to every Wesleyan student. They are also Wesleyan students, and they've been trained to help students identify their learning style. VARC is short for visual, oral, reading, and kinesthetic, or doing. And these are the 4 primary ways that people learn. I would encourage you to meet with a student success tutor at the beginning of the semester to learn what your learning style is and then identify the tools and methods that are going to work best for you. For example, there's a variety of note-taking methods. There's 3 or 4 primary models for note-taking that can really feed into your strengths. There's a visual mapping note-taking method, for example, and if you're a very visual learner, that might be one of the best ways for you to capture what's going on in lecture and to help you remember those things for exams. In addition to working with our student success tutors, definitely make sure you attend every review session that's offered or organized by your department or the class. Get to know your advisor. If you're a first-year student, then you have a dedicated first-year advisor. They've been trained on helping students identify what major they want or to shop around if they're undecided, but definitely utilize their office hours. Make sure that they recognize your face and get to know them. They are really indispensable. My first-year advisor was hugely helpful to me and was someone that I could trust to ask all kinds of questions of, not just class and schedule related, but kind of all things, college life related. You should definitely utilize the librarians. I will talk a little bit more in depth about the librarians in a minute. And then use the organization tips that follow, of course. Quickly, I'll click on this link to the Student Success Tutors page. When you go to IWU.edu, search the term Student Success Tutors, and you'll find this page. There is a schedule appointment button, which makes it very easy to schedule a one-on-one appointment with one of our tutors. And I would really encourage every student to do this Regardless if you feel you need it or not. I think that a lot of times students feel as though they have to wait to work with a tutor of any kind until they're struggling. But I would strongly encourage you to dismiss that idea and embrace tutoring, all types of tutoring on campus, as another tool to help you make sure that you're understanding course content, that you've got a really good organization system for your course materials, all of those things. And as you can see here, the student success tutors will help you with note taking methods, getting ready for tests, managing your time, presentation skills, and more. So much the way you would go to a biology tutor to help you review core concepts from your biology lecture, these student success tutors will help you develop your study skills and get organized for the semester. This is a no-brainer and it's very common sense, but it's really important that you take some time right at the beginning of classes, the very first week, to get organized. You won't get your syllabus until day one of class, but as soon as you get it, review it thoroughly. Every professor has a different set of policies for grading, how assignments get turned in, if they allow late assignments, and if so, how they manage grading those. Before you start classes, you can definitely make sure that you know where you plan to study. It's a very good idea that that is not your bed or a place where you usually spend your leisure time. Make sure it's a dedicated space. If you're on campus for the spring semester, the Ames Library has lots of great study space. And then, of course, organizing your calendar. I'll show you an example here of how you might decide to dedicate your time. You can do this in any format that makes sense. You might want to use a paper planner, you might want to use the calendar on your phone, but whatever way works for you, make sure that you schedule your classes, of course, those are here in red. If you've got a job, put those shifts in as well. If you have team practice or you like to get a regular workout in, set aside time for that. And then, of course, study. You're going to see a lot of study time on this calendar. You should spend about 2 hours for every 1 hour of class studying. When I was a student, that seemed like a lot. But I can promise you that it is not just necessary, but extremely beneficial. In these study hours, this is where you're going to review for exams. You're going to start researching papers. You're going to review and maybe rewrite your notes from lecture. That was a really good way for me to remember everything that happened in lecture, was to take the notes I wrote originally and then rewrite them one more time. This layout for studying is what worked for me. I was never a night owl, so I preferred doing a big long study day on Saturday and Sunday. You, unlike me, maybe you work best in the evening late at night, and so you might study a little bit later. Whatever works for you and fits your schedule, but make sure you get those study hours in the calendar and that you stick to them. Another option is to create a spreadsheet with all of your deadlines for projects. I found that students who struggle with organization generally, or if they have a learning need, maybe they struggle with ADD, for example, having all of the assignments for the whole semester laid out by class, assignment type, due date is super helpful because it can be sorted by either class or by the due date, and it can give you a really nice overview of the whole semester and help you appreciate exactly how much you're going to need to get done in the next 16 weeks. And of course, organize your materials. I liked color-coded notebooks and folders. Handwriting notes was always a lot better for me than typing in terms of remembering. So I do encourage students to give writing their notes over typing their notes a go. Writing notes can seem really overwhelming if you're expecting yourself to capture every single thing that the professor says, but effective note-taking does not use that methodology. Another reason to reach out to the student success tutors and work with them on identifying a note-taking method and getting some practice in on that works well for you. Naturally, get engaged in the class. One thing I really like is when I get ready to go into a class or a meeting, is I set the mental intention that I'm going to learn something while I'm there. It may sound simple, it might even sound hokey, but if you make that statement to yourself, I'm going to learn something new today. And you're going to go in with that set intention or paying attention to exactly what the lecture is covering. You will have an easier time paying attention and remembering things. Make the most of lecture by participating. Speak up, ask questions, offer feedback when the professor opens the floor. That's really, really important, not just so that you appear engaged to your professor, and some of you will have participation as part of your grade, but also because it is yet again going to help you remember everything that's going on in lecture. Reading effectively and reading everything before lecture is really key. I slacked on this big time my first year of college, and I paid heavily for it. Do not make my mistake. Get those study hours scheduled, like in the calendar example I showed you, and get those readings done before class. If you're looking for advice on how to read effectively, how to read to remember, what kinds of things to pay attention to, that's another thing the student success tutors can help you with. Engage your instructor. Make sure that you read your syllabus thoroughly, of course. Do visit their office hours. It's really great to reach out to a professor and schedule time during office hours at the beginning of the semester. Do this for all of your classes. You don't necessarily have to have a question. But if you'd like to have a question, if you feel better having something to talk about other than just saying hello and getting to know your professor, visit them after the first few lectures and tell them what you found interesting in lecture and ask them if they have more thoughts on it or if there's anything inside that topic they really think you should pay attention to for the exam. They want to see you and they want to talk to you. And of course, engage your classmates in Moodle for sure for online courses. And reach out to your classmates to make study pairs or accountability groups or study groups. That is extremely helpful in helping you retain information. And I forgot one important thing under instructors. Be kind and courteous with your email and check it every day. I appreciate that we are all inundated with email all the time, but it's really important that you manage your inbox and check it every single day. Motivation and discipline are, kind of hard, right? This is the crux of staying on top of your assignments, pushing through the semester. For me, it was always most difficult before breaks, either at the midterm or at the end of the semester. But remember that you can use small rewards to help keep yourself motivated. Give yourself a small coffee if you finish your readings and wrap up your study session successfully and check everything off of your list. Tell yourself that you really want to watch that new episode of the show that you love, but you're definitely going to wait until Saturday evening when you've had a good, long, successful study day. Little things like that can really help you stay motivated. Again, it might sound small, might even sound hokey, but that motivation will be super helpful. Create accountability and study partner groups. One thing I heard from students last semester as everybody got used to a lot of online remote learning was just having one other person to check in with kept them motivated to keep working. It might be one other person in the class that you agree you'll text each other when you both finish chapter 6's reading. And when you text each other that you're done, it'll spur the other one to finish if they haven't yet. And then when you both completed it, you can have a brief exchange about the key topics, what you thought might be on the exam from that chapter. That kind of little check-in really helped students stay on track, especially for online learning. And do your best to form habits. I understand that this might be the first time that you're imposing this much structure on your learning. My personal experience was that I didn't need to do a lot of organizing when I was a high school student. I kind of coasted through high school and was not super challenged by it in terms of the amount of work or the rigor. But Wesleyan was a totally different story. So I had to kind of develop these habits and build them when I came to college. I didn't have them already. But you can help yourself stay accountable and stay focused by making and sticking to that schedule and making sure you're on top of your assignments and to-do lists. Online courses, of course, present a special set of challenges. It's not as engaging, it's not always as easy to stay very focused and committed to an entirely online course. There's email and communication etiquette, of course. Check the email and stay on top of your inbox, but also be sure that you're writing grammatically solid, polite, courteous emails to your professors, to your classmates. It's important that you are patient and polite in messaging boards, in the Moodle discussion groups for your class, and extend patience to everybody else that you're communicating with. If you are emailing a professor at 11 o'clock at night, at midnight, know that they are not going to get back to you before the next day. And when they wake up in the morning, they may teach an 8 a.m. class, and then they may have office hours and appointments, and know that it may take a while. It may take a whole day or two for someone to get back to your email. So do be patient and kind and keep that in mind. If you're emailing a question about an assignment at 11 p.m. the night before it's due, you're probably not going to get that question answered, nor should you, because we all sleep, and that includes professors. In terms of staying motivated, it's important to keep track of your schedule and have those small rewards along the way that help you stay focused and keep you moving when you're feeling tired, fatigued, or not as interested in getting those tasks done. And of course, at the base of everything is understanding the course expectations. The very first way you do that is thoroughly review the syllabus. Pay attention to which projects are going to be the biggest amount of points. Take a look at how participation is framed in the syllabus. Some professors give credit for that. They expect you to be talking, communicating, and participating in the online course regularly. So that way you'll be fully ready to meet their expectations and get all of your points. As we get ready to wrap up, following, one of the first largely online semesters that Wesleyan has ever had, Wesleyan faculty offered up advice for students and what they saw was most helpful for students in being successful. Of course, find a quiet space. If at all possible, find a separate room, a separate corner, wherever it is that you're living and working, to attend class and study. If you're on campus, there's a ton of great spaces for this in the Ames Library, CNS, and State Farm Hall. Write down your questions. The cadence of lecture online is a lot different than the cadence of lecture face-to-face. You may forget, you may intend to ask a question, but then the conversation goes a different way. Maybe you try to ask the question a few times, but because of the nature of being online, maybe other people beat you to the punch and start talking, and then you never get a chance. Write your questions down as you have them. If you have a moment during lecture to ask it, you'll remember what it was. And if you don't, then that's a great conversation starter for visiting office hours with your professor. Up your note-taking game. So make sure that you make an appointment with our student success tutors to learn about the different note-taking methodologies and have all the supplies that you need for that to do that well in the way you plan to do it, whether that is on your computer or in your notebook. Plan to meet with your professor. They want to see you. They want you to come to office hours. They became professors because they enjoy teaching and they enjoy working with students. I had to get pretty brave to start going to office hours because I did find it intimidating. Especially as a first-generation college student, the job of professor felt very prestigious to me, and I was very anxious about appearing like I didn't know things or I wasn't paying attention because I had a question. I promise you, the students who go to office hours are more engaged students, and professors really appreciate their questions and their dedication to the class by utilizing office hours. Self-advocate. This can take a lot of different forms, but given the strangeness of the year that we're living, there are so many things that might arise in your life that you're going to need to communicate with your professor about. You may have a day where your internet is just out, let's say. No internet whatsoever, no ability to get online. You may utterly forget that you have an assignment due because your mom or your dad or a family member or housemate has gotten really, really sick. and you were trying to help them. Whatever it might be, it is important when these things come up to communicate early and often, explain your problem, apologize for the error, and kindly ask your professor to advise what your next steps should be. And understand that sometimes, though it's difficult, even if the problem was unavoidable for you, it might still have consequences in terms of grade. But the best way to avoid that and avoid losing points is to communicate early and often with your professor about these challenges and make sure that you know what the syllabus says about those types of things. And finally, time management. Much like the example schedule that I shared, if you build that out ahead of time, it's really going to help you stay organized. From my personal experience, just living life during COVID-19, the days can easily start to blend together. It can be really easy to start to feel overwhelmed by a task list and have trouble getting started. It's very strange to work at home and try to maintain motivation. We're not in the usual environments and we don't have the social feedback and accountability that we're used to. So setting a schedule and sticking to it will really, really help you do that. And finally, an overview of resources on campus that I strongly encourage you to utilize early and often. The student success tutors, which I have talked about, they are there to work with you to build your studies toolkit, help you identify what kind of learner you are, and pick the methods that work best for you for note-taking, for test prep, for memorization, for reading. Reach out to them and utilize them. They are a free resource for you. And the exact same thing goes for the Writing Center. I was super intimidated by the Writing Center as well. I was intimidated by a lot of things when I was a student. That's kind of a theme here, isn't it? Because it was a little nerve-wracking to write something and then hand it over to a fellow student and have them review it. It was a fear of judgment. Maybe my writing wasn't that good. Maybe I made a lot of mistakes. But I promise you that those tutors are trained to be helpful, compassionate, kind, understanding. They do not expect a paper to be perfect. Otherwise, the Writing Center wouldn't exist. And they can be so helpful in helping you understand writing prompts from your professor, making sure that your paper has addressed every piece of it. Nowadays, as a sort of regular working person and no longer a student, I have people proof what I write all the time. I don't push a single finished project forward without having had somebody else look at it. So I appreciate that it's uncomfortable at first, but I strongly encourage you to give it a shot and start doing it sooner rather than later. It'll get a lot easier to receive that feedback, and your papers will be so strong for it. In addition to papers, the Writing Center will also help you review and get ready for presentations as well, which is very helpful. If you look up the Writing Center on IWU.edu, you'll find their page and a button to schedule an appointment one-on-one. They use the same platform as the student success tutors for scheduling. The Ames Library. I mentioned the librarians earlier in the presentation. At Ames Library, there are 3 full-time librarians who have divided all the majors and departments among them, meaning that if you're a biology major or a sociology major, you have a specific librarian that is there to support you and help you with any and all research. For research papers, reflection papers, finding primary sources, that is their entire job. They are there to support you and serve you. I wish I had connected with my librarian in my early years at Wesley, and it wasn't until I was a senior doing my capstone presentation that I realized I could rely on a librarian to help me put together a really strong set of resources and build a really amazing paper from them. So I would encourage you to start that early and often. They're exceedingly kind, they're so smart, they're so helpful, and now as a staff member, I go to them regularly when I'm looking for resources for any number of things. So utilize that. It's an amazing resource. You'll learn so much from them. Accommodations. If you have a right to an accommodation because you have a documented need, might be physical, but it might also be related to your learning. For example, if you have ADD, if you have anxiety or other mental health issues, you may qualify to receive accommodations like extended test time, the ability to take the test in a separate, quiet, distraction free room, the ability to have extensions on certain kinds of assignments, the ability to have a student partner with you and share notes with you. These are all super helpful, all allowed, all things that are part of accommodations. But in order to get access to those, you need to communicate with Chandra Shipley and get that service set up for yourself. You have to advocate for yourself in order to get those. So I strongly encourage you to do that now if you have not already. And finally, counseling and health services. Of course, health services is there to help you if you get sick, if you have a cold, whatever it might be. And counseling is for every single student and it's free of charge. The therapists at the counseling center will help you with stress management from school, conflict resolution with roommates or fellow students, or trauma challenges, things related to your family, things related to things that happened before you were at Wesleyan. The resource of free therapy is an excellent one. So I would strongly encourage you to tap them anytime you're feeling like you need someone to talk to about anything that's emotionally or mentally challenging for you. I utilized counseling as a student, and it was so helpful in helping me to keep my mental health in a good place so that I could focus on my academics. Therapy is great. I love therapy. I say that so that we can remove any remaining stigma that there might be on it. It's immensely helpful and it's very healthy to go. So I would strongly encourage you to do so. And that is it. This was a very brief and quick overview of a variety of ideas and resources on campus. So please reach out to and schedule an appointment with our student success tutors. At the very beginning of the semester, those schedules might not be up right away, but they'll be up within the first week to 2 weeks of classes. Please feel free to email me if you've got questions. If you want the link, for example, to the example calendar and schedule, anything at all that was in the presentation that you'd like more follow-up on or have a question about, please reach out. I always enjoy talking to students, and I hope you have a wonderful semester at Wesleyan. Thank you.